Hey, what do you have, Austin? Bible.
Bible.
Right.
Be
That's right. All right, can you say bye-bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
All right.
everybody. Let's go.
All right. I hope you all are having a good, restful Sunday afternoon. Trying to stay cool. But we'll start all over. I want to start with a couple of corrections. Last week I told you all I was referring to a book called Worthy Women, and that was right, but I had the author completely wrong. It is not Jan McWhorter. It is Mary Alice Wilhelm. Some of you all may have done it. It's an older book. Matt gave me this book, or maybe somebody gave it to Matt right when we got married or before we got married, or maybe it's one that Matt had in his library. So this is the book I referenced last week, and this is the book I'm going to reference this week, because this week we're going to talk about mothers. But before I get there, last week one of my points was in my Devo was if someone said something wrong or falsely, would you know it? And out of pure honest mistake, I did that last week. And you all caught it, so good job. When I did the end of my Devo last week, it was supposed to be Proverbs 31, and I knew it was supposed to be Proverbs 31, and I had written down Proverbs 31, but for some reason, Psalms 31 came out. So I had the right scripture, I just said it wrong, and it was brought to my attention, and I appreciate that. And no, I was not testing you all. Some have asked me of that. It was just an honest mistake, but it was kind of funny, ironic that happened on the week that I talked about false teachers. So I do appreciate the people who let me know, and good job on knowing that it was Proverbs instead of Psalms. So I wanted to start by saying those two corrections, and thank you. But this week we're going to talk about mothers. And I'm going to begin and end with a poem. And I know you all are probably thinking, oh, we just did Mother's Day. I am taking a totally different view, totally different path with this mothers. So hopefully you all will continue to listen and not hit the stop button just yet. But like I said, I want to start off, and it's a poem in this book, and it's called From a Parent. And I couldn't have said it any better myself if I was the one writing it. So I want to share it with you all. I can share your life, but I cannot live it for you. I can teach you things, but I cannot make you learn. I can give you directions, but I cannot make you follow. I can allow you freedom, but I cannot account for it. I can take you to church, but I cannot make you believe. I can teach you right from wrong, but I cannot always decide for you. I can buy you beautiful clothes, but I cannot make you beautiful inside. I can offer you advice, but I cannot accept it for you. I can give you love, but I cannot force it upon you. I can teach you to be a friend, but I cannot make you one. I can teach you to share, but I cannot make you unselfish. I can teach you respect, but I cannot force you to show honor. I can advise you about friends, but I cannot choose them for you. I can teach you about sex, but I cannot keep you pure. I can tell you the facts of life, but I cannot build up your reputation. I can tell you about drinking and drugs, but I cannot say no for you. I can tell you about goals, but I cannot achieve them for you. I can let you work, but I cannot make you responsible. I can teach you to obey, but I cannot answer for your actions. I can teach you kindness, but I cannot force you to be gracious. I can warn you about your sins, but I cannot make you moral. I can love you as my child, but I cannot place you in God's family. I can pray for you, but I cannot make you walk with God. I can teach you about Jesus, but I cannot make him your Savior. I can show you faith, but I cannot make you trust Christ. And I don't know if that hit home to me because Elizabeth is starting school in a couple of weeks, and all of that hit home. All of that was kind of, as a mom, as a role, I need to set the right example, but I cannot do things for her. There are certain things I just cannot do. And that will lead into the mothers of the Bible that I want to talk about today. And we will see, I think we're going to talk about 4 of them. And all of them have no control over the end result of their children. And the first mother we're going to talk about had a great end result. When we get down the line, we had some moms that didn't have a good result, and it wasn't their fault. And we have some moms that it was their fault their children did not do well. So I wanted to lead off with that poem to kind of get us in the right mindset as mothers of we need to do everything right, but there's a certain point that we can't go beyond, that the children have to take up for themselves and be responsible for themselves. So I want to start with the most obvious to me mother of the Bible, and that's Mary, mother of Jesus. And we're going to read Luke chapter 2, verses 41 through 45. And it says, "Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances." So we have Mary, and she's the mother of Jesus, and they went for this feast of Passover. And it may seem odd to us that they went a day's journey and did not realize that Jesus was missing. But I was in a class a couple weeks ago, and the teacher hit on this point. And it's not like us traveling day. We may have 3 or 4 carloads behind us. We're all following each other. We're all accounted for. It's pretty easy to keep track of 3 or 4 carloads. We may have, maybe 15, 20 people? They had hundreds that were traveling with them. Yes, they were all relatives. Yes, they're related, but Jesus may have been in the very front one day walking. He may have been in the middle. He didn't stay by Mary and Joseph's side the entire time. And it's hard for me to realize, okay, he's been gone for a day. He's been gone. How do we not know he wasn't with us? But I'm not used to that big of a gathering traveling one time. We're walking, lots of people around. So I guess it's easier to get more lost than what I would think. But as any mother would, Mary starts to panic. Mary has that instinct, hey, something's wrong. Somebody's missing. Something's missing. And she finds out that it's Jesus. So she goes into full panic mode like any mother would. And she goes and she's looking and realizes they've left him. So what do? You retrace your steps. So they retrace their steps. It takes them back to where they're going. And they end up finding Jesus in the temple. And it says 3 days later, she got to realize they're already a day's journey out. They're a day's journey back. And then they have a day trying to find Jesus. And of course, when she finds them, the first thing she says, and totally mother-like, what have you done? Why have you done this to us? Why did you do this to me? I'm worried. I was scared. And don't we do the same thing today? And it immediately made me think of Elizabeth. And we have went to Walmart, and there's been several times that I'll be honest with you, I don't have her on a leash. I don't hold her hand. I probably should this day and age, but I don't. But there has been a couple of times those panics where she went around the corner and I didn't realize it. Or, hey, Mom, I'm going to go look in the very next aisle, and after about a minute, she doesn't come back, or I don't hear her, and that panic, your heart starts beating real fast. You panic, you go around the corner, and she's not there because she's coming around the other corner, and you don't know it. And as soon as she comes around, and you finally meet, and you're yelling her name, and she has the biggest smile on her face like she's done something great, what immediately comes out of my mouth? Elizabeth, what have you done to me? Elizabeth, do you realize what you just did? Do you realize what you just put me through? Mommy was scared. It's exactly what Mary did. The mother, and one of the mothers of the Bible, the same thing. Why did you do this to me? And even though it was just, for them it was 3 days, for me it was a few minutes, it's the same panic. It's the same motherly instinct that we all share. And I think it goes with all the mothers across the board. We can all relate to how Mary felt in that moment. But it also says in Luke 2:52, Mary was successful. She was a successful mother. And in Luke 2 verses 52, it says, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Isn't that what we all want as mothers? So even though he gave her the panic, he gave her the fright, he gave her this, she reacted like any normal mother would, she was still a successful mother listed in the Bible. What could any mother want more than this for her child? To be successful, to have her child grow in the Lord, to be a good Christian. Can we say we're like Mary? Should we be more like Mary? The next mother I want to talk about is Hannah. And oh, how so many of us can sympathize with Hannah. Hannah wanted a child. Hannah could not have a child. That's all she longed for. And her, I don't want to call it, but the other lady in the house, the other wife, she was able to have children, and she's just rapidly popping them out one after another. Oh, look, 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 I don't have any trouble. I'm having boys. I'm having this. Look, and just rubbing it into her face. How many women can relate to that today? How many women try to have children and can't? How many of them long to have that child in their arms, and it's not an easy process. Sometimes it takes years to get pregnant, if they can get pregnant at all. How sympathetic are we as mothers who are able to have children, and it seems like they're just popping them out like crazy? How sympathetic are we to the Christian who's sitting in the same church building as we are, or the same pew, or the same whatever as we are, that have been trying for years and maybe just got the devastating news, hey, you can't have children. You're going to have to adopt, or you're going to have to go other routes, or whatever. How sympathetic are we? And that really has hit home to me. Same way with a woman or a mother who has lost a child. Do we think about that sometimes when we're talking about our children? And that's what I want us to relate to with Hannah, is she couldn't have children, but she prayed and she prayed and she begged and she pleaded. But the thing about Hannah, and this shows to me how strong of a woman she is, when she told God, when she prayed to God, she said, if you give me a son, I promise you I will give him back to you. Now, a lot of people say a lot of things, especially when they're in desperate need, when they want something so bad. But Hannah stuck to it. God blessed Hannah with a child, with a son. And what did she do? She gave him to the Lord all the days of his life. How many women, especially a mother who has wanted a child for so long, who can't have children, she's finally got this miracle baby, is willing to give it up? Not 10 years down the road, not 50 years down the road, not when she dies. When he was weaned, 3, 4 years old, maybe 5, I don't really know for sure, she gave him up without a doubt. Do you know how hard it was? Oh, I'm sure it was extremely hard. But she gave him up. She kept her promise to the Lord. Are we that strong of a mother? Do we keep our promises to God like Hannah did? And we see this in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and verses 11, where Hannah promised God that she would never put a razor to Samuel's head and would return him to the Lord if she did that. Even though it was hard, Hannah did that. And there's something also that Hannah did that we can do. We can do today. And it is raising our children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. We, us, mothers, have to raise our children up in the Lord. Now I want to move on to Rebecca. We all know Rebecca, and why do we know Rebecca? She had twins. She had Jacob and Esau. 2 brothers who, if they're going to fight over something, they're going to fight over something. The big key thing is jealousy. If you want to read a story of jealousy in the Bible, this is one good one. They are jealous. But why are they jealous? Because Rebecca made them that way, didn't she? Rebecca had a favorite one, and Isaac had a favorite one. It's not how it should be. And that's what I focus on with Rebecca. How are we as mothers? Are we favoring our children, one child over the other? And it's not necessarily a good thing. Now, yes, I can kind of relate to this, because if you look at Elizabeth and look at Austin, they're opposite in everything. Austin is 100% boy. You tell him not to do it and he's already doing it. Elizabeth, you can kind of reason with her. You can kind of make her make sense. She's a thinker. She wants it laid out for her. Austin, he could care less. Before you get the first word out of your mouth, he's done doing whatever he's going to do and doesn't care. It doesn't matter what you do to him. He's going to continue to do it. But how many times, I've got to be careful when I'm talking. I don't do it because right now I don't really have a favorite. And maybe that's just because my kids are still young. I don't really have anything that Elizabeth's better at than Austin, if that makes sense. But how many times do we hear a parent say, oh, well, she's my golden child. He's my devil child. Oh, she's my athletic one. she's my smart one. She's this, she's that. And the kids hear that. How is that going to make the other child feel? If I'm constantly bragging on Elizabeth, how is that going to make Austin feel? If I'm constantly bragging on Austin, Elizabeth's going to get her feelings hurt. She'll tell you right quick. She'll start sulking. You'll see her face get drawn. She'll go pout in the corner. Gotta be really careful, and most of the time it's unintentional. And there's gonna become a day when one of them is better at something than the other one. But I've got to figure out what they're better at and praise both of them equally and love both of them equally. And Rebecca did not. And we see that in her story. She showed partiality to her sons, and it created problems, not just them, but throughout their whole lives. How many times, like I said before, do we hear a mom say, or we hear a child say, my mom likes my sister better than me? Is that true? Should it be true? We have to be very careful to love all of our kids the same, or more than likely it's going to cause jealousy, much like it did with Jacob and Esau. Rebecca went to great lengths to make Jacob look, smell, and feel like Esau because she wanted her favorite to get the blessing. That's just not right. But sometimes, do we do the same? Sometimes are we a Rebecca? One child's smarter than the other child. One child's more athletic. One child's more musically inclined. One child's more self-sufficient. One child's more self-confident, and the list could go on and on and on. Let's try not to be Rebeccas. And I was reading this as I was studying about Rebecca. I was reading this, the book, The Worthy Women, and it came across a scenario, and I wanted to share it with you because it really is true. And it's talking about, during an interview on a TV show, Mrs. Eisenhower was asked, "Aren't you proud of your son?" In which she replied, "Yes, I am. But which one are you referring to?" How powerful is that? That honestly, Miss Eisenhower probably knew exactly which son this interviewer was talking about, but she didn't allude to it. She didn't admit to it. She said that, yes, I am. But which one? I am equally proud of them both. She didn't show favoritism. And I think we should act like that as Christians, not show favoritism, not just as a mother to our children, but show favoritism across the board, show favoritism at church. You like somebody better than somebody else, and that's okay. We're going to have closer friendships. We're going to have closer bonds to some people, and I'm not saying that's wrong. But when we're in a setting and we just flat out show the favoritism and we're proud of it and we're boasting about it, that's not how we should be. So we need to be more like Mrs. Eisenhower when it comes to our children in the church, and less like Rebecca, less jealous, less trying to show off the child that that's our favorite, I guess you would say. And then the next two mothers I want to talk about, I really didn't know their names, to be honest with you. I knew the background stories of the sons, but I did not know the names. And the first one is the mother of Joash, and she was Zibiah of Beersheba. And we find this in 2 Chronicles chapter 24. And we all know Joash became king when he was 7 years old, and he reigned for over 40 years. He was a good king and did what was right in the sight of the Lord. So I think it's safe to say that his mother Zibiah had a good influence on him if he was able to be a king at age 7. She taught him the right things, and we all know God's hand was in this, but still, to be mature enough at 7 years old to rule, to become a king, she had to do something right. But did Joash stay good? He turned to idols. He turned bad. And this is the lesson I want to get from Zibiah, his mother. She did everything right, but her son turned. Her son did evil. Is that Zibiah's fault? No. She did everything right. No matter how good of a job we do as a mother, the world is going to undermine the good we try to do. Kids at a certain age become responsible for their actions. And I heard my dad say this several times growing up, and I never understood it until Elizabeth was born. And now that she's old enough to talk and think on her own and kind of do some things on her own, she's getting older, I think about him quite often. And he would say, "Where did I go wrong? What did I do?" And I heard Dad say this more times than not. And there, like I told you all before in pre-search, there's 5 of us. I have 3 brothers and a sister. And whenever one of us got in trouble or we did something wrong, or Dad always thought it was his fault. It's my fault. Where did I go wrong? I taught you better than that. What did I do? And I never understood that. Now I do, because I have children. As mothers, as fathers, for sure mothers, I know I do, I put the blame on myself. I put the blame on, why did Elizabeth do that? What did I do to show Elizabeth that was right when it wasn't the right thing to do? What have I done? Where along the line did I mess up? And I think that is how Zibiah felt with Joash. Where did I go wrong? But it's not Zibiah's fault. It wasn't our fault. It is our job as mothers to raise our children right. But once they are grown, they have to decide for themselves what kind of life they will live. There's another one. It's Jehoiada, King Amaziah's mother, was in the same boat. In 2 Chronicles chapter 25, verse 2, it says, he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but not with a loyal heart. This is not something that just came about in the last 2,000 years or 200 years. It's been around since the beginning. We raise our children right, but somewhere along the way, the world gets a hold of them and they stumble. They fall. Sometimes we lose them for good. It's not the mother's fault. As long as we as mothers do what we can in the years we have them at home, in their years of upbringing, as long as we do the Christian thing and we teach them the right way, that's all we are called to do. Now, do we hope they stay and follow it like we talked about, train up a child and he'll stay that way? Yes, that's all of our mothers' hopes. I don't think there's a mother out there that says, I want the worst for my children. That I hope the devil gets them and just does whatever. I never want to see them. I hope they get into everything they can. I've never heard a mother say that. All the time I hear mothers say, I want the best for my children. So we have to, as mothers, get our children on the right path, but it's up to them to stay on that path. And again, I think it all goes by example. Shouldn't say it all goes. A big influence is example. A big influence is actions. If we're not showing as mothers, showing our children the right path, why not? And that's what I want you to think about. And last, I want to end with Eunice. We all know Eunice. It was Timothy's mother. And we read about her in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. And it says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. Again in 2 Timothy 3, verses 15. And how from childhood you have been acquainted with the sacred writings, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. Paul, we know, wrote 2 Timothy, and Paul is talking about Timothy and how Eunice and his grandmother raised him. And what does it say? Since he was young, he knew, he was acquainted, he was around, he was familiar with the Bible, which they didn't have the Bible back then. They had what they call the sacred writings, the scrolls. We know that, but I'm going to say the Bible. Our children today, do they know the Bible? Are they acquainted with the Bible? Do they know what a Bible is? And I know you all are probably laughing like, yeah, duh, Paul, everybody knows. I've been around some kids that I hate to say. When you say, did you bring your Bible to class? And what's a Bible? I've never seen a Bible before. We don't have one of those in our house. There are people out there like that. So we've got to be careful just to assume that everybody knows what the Bible is. But as for Timothy, Timothy knew. Timothy was acquainted. Why? His mother. The strong role model. His mother made sure he was familiar with it. We as mothers must be like Eunice and pass on to their children a faith to live by. We as mothers must make a difference in our child's life and teach them about God. If we don't teach them, the world for sure will teach them, and we don't want that. And the world is just out there waiting to grab our children. And most of you all know, and most of you all that are watching this have children or grown children, have great-grandchildren, and all this is probably not news to you. You all have heard everything that I'm saying. But ending this poem, or ending this devotional, I want to read another poem about the devil. We started off with a poem about, I can teach you everything, but I can't make you do it. I can show you all of this, but you have to do it. I can't make you do it. So I want to end, and to me, this poem again hit home, just reminiscent about my life. It made me think of growing up and how true this poem was. So I want you to listen. And it's called, Today I Will Take Your Children. I have come to visit your children, and I'm pleased with what I see. They abuse all kind of drugs and are getting drunk with me. They live as Gomorrah or Sodom, their minds perverse and blown. I will claim their souls any time now. You shouldn't have left them alone. I'm glad you worked long hours. I'm glad you were busy a lot, and it would have been harder to sway them if you too hadn't been using pot. At your schools, I've been at work, making sex an acceptable gain. You're slept while I fought to keep prayer out, to add to your neglectful shame. You don't seem to notice the witchcraft I broadcast on your own TV. It's just an innocent program. Twitch your nose as they follow me. Add a couple of violent sitcoms. It's funny to see heads blown in two. Now your little Tommy has his own gun, and there's nothing you can do. They're mine and you cannot reach them. Their hearts are hard, cold, and black. I've shown them how to party with pot, cocaine, and crack. You've been a tremendous help, though. I couldn't have done it alone. If you hadn't forsaken your prayer life, these seeds I could not have sown. So stay away from the Bible teachings. Don't listen to what God has to say. Your children are no longer your problem, a price they'll eternally pay. Without Christ, they are mine to devour. Without God, nothing you can do. Today I will take your children. Tomorrow I'll be coming for you. Sincerely, Satan. How true is that? And like I said, growing up, especially my teenage years, my high school years, is when you're introduced, when I was introduced to drugs, and I've been told that it is a lot younger now. But that's when you saw the drugs being passed around school. You know which hallways not to go down. You knew which groups were going to come up to you and offer you that. It really hit home. The drinking, the alcohol, the peer pressure really hit our teenage years. Never bothered me. I never once said yes to any of that. And what do I credit that to? My parents, my family, my brothers, my sister, I had a brother who was a few years ahead of me, and I was the last one of 5, like I've told you, so I was always somebody's little sister, and we all went to the same schools, and they all knew, but I never once even wanted to touch alcohol, wanted to touch a cigarette, and I think it's because of being a very strong Christian family, having a strong mother, having a strong father. And I see that now, and I want that for my kids. And is it a blessing I didn't mess up? Maybe. Are there other ways I messed up? For sure. But again, it all goes back to what my main point in this whole lesson today is, and I don't know if you all can see my shirt. Matt told me to wear it. It says Mom. And he said, how fitting is that you're doing a mother's devotional and you're wearing a mom shirt. Mothers, we have a serious role, a very serious role to children, grandchildren, people who claim to be our mothers. My children, the whole Church of Fulton has mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, aunts, uncles galore. And it takes a village, and we need that village. And I need a strong village for my family, and so does everybody else. But it starts at home. It starts with our mothers. And I want us to be strong Christian mothers. So I hope you all take this devotional and look at the good moms in the Bible and look at the bad moms. And there's tons more that we could have looked at. And what amazes me is each time I do this devotional is how, even though it was written years and years and years ago, it still relates to today. And that's one thing that amazes me about the Bible, is they still relate to today. It's the same things going on today. So this week, I want you all to think about how you could be better mothers. And some of you, like I said, have moved on. Your kids are moved out, grown, married, but maybe they have kids. So are you being a good grandmother? You don't have any kids at all? Hey, take on mine, especially at church. Take on mine. Are you being that motherly example at church? Are you being that motherly example in the neighborhood, at the grocery store, wherever we go? So I hope you all have a good week. Thanks for listening, and I will see you all again next week.